Hey, anatomy students, this is the digestive system. This is our first part of our notes. As you're working along with this, whether at home or school, or whatever we're doing, make sure you're watching these notes videos and also filling in your student notes. You're going to use this for the quizzes. You're going to use this for getting ready for your exam and all kinds of stuff. Digestion is one of the most complex systems. The digestive system is, because there's so many moving parts. It's also one of my favorites to look at because it's simple in the way that it just moves through food through our body, but it also is going to use so many different things to do that. I mean, in essence, it's one long tube. This lady's missing a head here. It's one long tube that moves from the mouth to the anus, getting rid of food. But along the way, as it says right here in our definition of digestion, foods are going to be broken down and then absorbed. The nutrients that come from these foods absorbed into our bloodstream, which then is going to carry those nutrients to every part of our body. Just like we learned with the cardiovascular system, blood touches every part of our body. Okay, it gives us not only oxygen, but these nutrients. But digestion is mainly, before we get to the absorption, is the mechanical and chemical breakdown of food. We'll see along our pathway of this big long tube, there's some things that mechanically, physically break food down. Think about your teeth, right? Your teeth are going to nom, 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 chew up the food and tear it from the ham sandwich that we're eating into, shredded bits of ham sandwich, right? Inside our stomach, food's going to get pulverized as it moves around in our stomach. Our stomach, we'll see, it actually contracts and expands and breaks up food while it's in there. Then there's also chemical breakdown. Chemical breakdown, we mainly think about our stomach. We'll see that there's stomach acid, is what most people call it, but there's other parts to it. This acid destroys the food. It starts tearing it apart. Why is that? Because once we get this food torn into little bitty bits and usable mashed up things, our body can start pulling the nutrients out of it. In the form of a ham sandwich, it's hard for those carbohydrates and that protein to be broken down and used by our body. But instead, when we break that protein down into some amino acids and that carbohydrates into some very simple sugars, they can be absorbed. They can be easily used by the body. So digestion is that mechanical and chemical breakdown and then the absorption. And that's what's going to happen in the intestines, as we'll see. You can see there's different organs, lots of them. We call the main digestive system organs the ones that food will pass through. Think about it, the long tube from mouth to anus. The esophagus, we'll talk about it a little longer, but this is the long tube that goes from our mouth down to our stomach, the stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. Accessory organs, those things that accessorize with the digestive system, aids in some way, but food does not move through: your salivary glands, your liver, your gallbladder, and your pancreas. And we're going to look at every one of these. We'll have, hopefully, a nice little group project later on where you'll demonstrate your knowledge of all these organs too. All right, so the digestive system, I mentioned it being a big long tube. We actually call that tube the gastrointestinal tract. So the GI, if you ever hear about somebody going to a GI doctor, it stands for gastrointestinal tract. If we were to lay out your gastrointestines or your gastrointestinal tract, so from mouth to anus, and stretch them out, okay, so all those intestines and things being stretched out, it would be somewhere around 28 feet, depending on how big of a person you are, okay? But it's not really going to get smaller than that. That's a long ways, guys. Kind of like the length of my room from front to back. So fun experiment would be to rip someone open in my class and pull out their esophagus and their stomach and their large and small intestines, stretch them out, and we'll see how long they are. When we do our fetal pigs, that's one of the things you'll do. You'll be amazed at how intestines that are the size of, I don't know, maybe a little larger than a golf ball will be about 10 foot long. So it's kind of cool. The gastrointestinal tract, we've already mentioned, is the things that food passes through: your mouth, your pharynx, also known as your throat, your esophagus, the stomach, small and large intestines, and then the anal canal, okay, which finishes right here at the rectum. All throughout this GI tract, there's different layers. Now, first off, this is kind of an odd concept to think about, but the space within the tube. So think about if you were to look down in someone's throat, the open area that is vacant of all tissue, but it's surrounded by tissue, is called the lumen, okay? So same principle. If we ran a camera Proctologists might run a camera up your anus into your intestines, and that area where there is nothing but the middle of the tube, so it's not like really named for a part of it, it's just the empty gap, the empty space in the tube is called that lumen. All right, no matter which sin we're talking about, the lumen. But then we can look at the layers of the gastrointestinal tract. So this is the lumen, this is the open area, and this is the tube that's cut in half. Imagine if it had another part to it. The innermost layer is the mucosa. Okay, the mucosa. You've probably heard mucus before. We've talked about it in here. Mucosa, the innermost layer. This is responsible for secreting that mucus and also enzymes. Also, in the intestines, this helps absorb the nutrients. It pulls those nutrients into the bloodstream. Then beyond that's the submucosa. Right after that, this is lots of blood vessels that supply the intestines with blood. Lymphatic vessels, we'll learn more about that later. And the nerves, so we kind of have a feeling. It's when you can kind of feel if you swallowed something that was, kind of large or thick or pointy or something, and it rolls down in your esophagus, you kind of get a feeling because of the nerves in the submucosa of, ooh, something's pressing against the inside of my throat. Then there's something called the muscular layer. This muscular layer, just like it sounds, made of smooth muscle. We've talked about that way back when we talked about tissues. Smooth muscle is involuntary. This is responsible for movements of the digestive tract. Think about it. Once you swallow it down the back of your throat, you don't think about food moving anymore. It's because of this muscular layer and the smooth muscles that make it up, the involuntary muscles. And the outermost layer is the serosa. So when we cut into a pig and we see the intestines, we're really just looking at the serosa of the intestines, the outermost layer. Now, this is attached to a lot of connective tissues and things that hold it in place. All right, let's start on the end of the upper end of the gastrointestinal tract, and that's the mouth. The mouth. We are very familiar with the mouth. We run it all the time. We eat all the time. The mouth is very useful in different capacities. We're going to look at it from the eating standpoint. It's the beginning of it, and there's all kinds of structures inside there. Teeth, salivary glands, which produces saliva, spit. There's your tongue, and then there's something called the hard and soft palates. The mouth is responsible for both mechanical and chemical breakdowns of food. Think about wine. The mechanical parts are your teeth and your tongue destroying food, right? Ripping it up physically. Your chemical parts are, your saliva breaking down food. We're going to look at saliva later on. There's actually chemicals in there. It's not just water. But these chemicals start the process of softening and breaking down food. Your uvula is this little hangy down thing in the back of your throat, if you want to think about it. Your uvula and something else later on may get a little confusing because they do a very similar job. I remember the uvula is in the upper part of the GI tract or in the upper part of the mouth. U for upper. This functions to close off the nasal cavity from the throat. This prevents food from getting up in your nasal cavity or your sinuses. So when you swallow, gulp, this flap actually goes backwards and covers up a little hole that connects up here into your sinuses back around there. If you've ever swallowed little things like food, like rice or beans or something, peas, and you had one get up in there, it's because you swallowed a whole bunch at a time and your uvula didn't do a very good job covering it up. But if it does its job, we shouldn't have anything up in our sinuses. So the uvula. Your teeth function to break up food in smaller pieces. And what this does is it increases the surface area of food. So you may have, a big chunk of steak and you start chewing it up really well. That turns it into kind of a mush, but it has increased the surface area. If you spit it back out, which gross, but if you spit it back out, it would cover more surface area on your plate than that big hunk would because your teeth has ripped it to shreds. Now, we have two sets of teeth. Okay, we have two sets of teeth. The primary teeth, which a lot of people call the baby teeth, they start forming anywhere from 6 months of age to 2 years. Sometimes it may be a little later than that, just depending on the kid. There are only 20 of them, 10 in the upper part of our mouth and 10 in the lower part of our mouth. As we know, they get wiggly. After a while, they start to fall out, and everybody gets real excited, and the tooth fairy comes. My kid has a few wiggly teeth right even now. 2 of them, in fact. Then we have the secondary teeth, or we call them sometimes like your adult teeth. These are what pop in after you lose the baby teeth. And these appear somewhere around 6 years of age. Of course, we know they don't all fall out at once, hopefully. They don't all just appear at once either. They come a variety of times, and it ain't unusual. I say around 6 years of age. You may be 4, or your kid may be 4 one day and start having adult teeth pop in. It may be 10 years old when the last one comes in. It's not that big of a deal. It's just kind of a difference for humans. It's interesting if you want to have some nightmares. You could Google like a baby skull's teeth, and they actually have sets of teeth up inside their jawline. That's where they are. They don't just like magically form when you're like 6 years old and then pop in. They're there the whole time. It's just you don't have a lot of need for them, and they would fill up that mouth way too full. As we get older and our mouth starts to get bigger, there's room for these teeth. Because notice, there's only 20 baby teeth or primary teeth. A typical adult will have somewhere around 32 teeth. Well, we'll have 32 teeth. This is including all 4 wisdom teeth, however. Wisdom teeth are interesting. Those are the 4 back teeth. One up top, one down low on this side, and same for the other side. Some people have all 4 come in, and they fit great. Some people will have 4 come in, and they have to get them all pulled because their mouth isn't big enough. Some people never form the wisdom teeth. They just don't ever come in. Some people may have 1 or 2 or even 3 that come in. All of that's really not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. The reason people have their wisdom teeth pulled, however, think about it, if this tooth was popping in, and it may cause all these other teeth to shift because there's not enough room here. So it can mess up alignment on all teeth, which isn't just cosmetic. It can affect the way you chew, can affect the feel of your mouth. Sometimes it can actually push them, and there'll start to be problems with the roots of these other teeth. So that's why people have their wisdom teeth pulled. Different types of teeth, and you may have heard of some of these names before. The incisors are your front teeth, the front 8 teeth, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom here. These incisors are using to bite off large pieces of food, and it rips it off. Okay, humans do the same thing as most higher level mammals we think of, and we think about like dogs or cats or whatever tearing off with their front couple teeth. Humans use their incisors for the same thing. Canines, or the cuspids, these are the 4 total. These teeth right after the main 4 teeth, 2 up top, 2 down bottom. These are used for grasping and tearing food as well. They really work hand in hand with the incisors, but they're a larger surface area on top there, so they can also kind of function as these bicuspids. Then we have bicuspids, 4 up top, 4 down low. They're going back in the mouth here. These 2 and these 2. These are for grinding. The food we tear off with our incisors and bicuspids, but it kind of gets torn and pushed back to the back of the mouth. Bicuspids start grinding that food up, increasing the surface area, breaking that food down. Then we've got our molars that are in the back of our mouth. Now you'll have 8 molars, but we also include the wisdom teeth as molars. These are the very flat, larger area on the top of those teeth as compared to the front incisors that are very sharpish and narrow. And then we've got these that are just like a grinding stone. These 2 teeth beat on each other with food in the middle and grinds that food up. There's parts of the teeth. Your crown, this is the part that projects beyond the gum line. This is what we see of the teeth, okay? The root is what we don't see, right? The visible portion of the crown. The root's what's below the jaw line, or below the gum line into the jawbone. It anchors the tooth in. About 2/3 of that tooth is root. So we have 2 different parts, crown and root. Then we have some different parts of the teeth too. The enamel is this strong white covering of the tooth. Enamel is interesting in how strong it is. It's the strongest substance in the body, even stronger than bone. But enamel cannot be replaced. Once we'll talk about cavities in a little bit. Once enamel is damaged, it is gone. It does not replace itself. And this is what differs teeth from bones. Teeth are not bones. Bones can heal themselves, right? They're going to reproduce those osteocytes, those bone cells, and reproduce. Teeth are not able to do that. So that's why teeth are not classified as bone, even though a lot of people think they're the same. Skeletons have them in there included, but they're not bone. Dentin is this yellow bone-like material underneath the enamel. This is bone, nerve fibers in it. So if we have a hole in our enamel, say like a cavity, the reason it hurts is because dentin is being exposed to the elements in our mouth and also the air inside our mouth. continue on with the next part of the notes and then do some assignments.